Talking season is officially here. SEC Media Days in Dallas, Texas next week. Hello, friends. I'm Chris Phillips. He's Dave Shoemate. He's Cole Thompson. We're breaking down everything, your full SEC Media Days preview, looking ahead to the week that will be in the Lone Star State. Guys, make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. And I want to give a shout out to our good friends, MyBookie. MyBookie actually sponsoring our trip to Dallas, Texas, similar to what they did a couple weeks ago for the College World Series. So again, make sure you check out mybookie.ag, promo code SECU to get your special welcome offer on your first deposit. Guys, it's never too early to place your wagers, whether it be on totals, it be on spreads, what have you. MyBookie, the place to go. They've also got a great casino you can go play as well. So again, our friends at mybookie.ag, promo code SECU to get your first deposit match today. Like I mentioned, I'm joined by my good friends Dave Shoemate, Cole Thompson. And why do I bring these fine gentlemen in? Because us three, the three amigos, if you will be covering SEC Media Days from every single angle you can think of, from boots on the ground to press conference reactions to takeaways to opinions to what have you. The best SEC Media Days coverage, dare I say, that you're going to find. Dave, Cole, what's going on, boys?
What's going on, man? It's that time of year. It's like as the old ball coach said, it's talking season. We're almost there. I feel like it used to be a little later. I feel like they keep almost pushing it up. Maybe I'm wrong and imagine that, but I feel like it used to be the last week of July, and then it immediately almost went into fall camp the very next week for these coaches. But now they sandwich in one more recruiting week before all that. But no, I mean, it's essentially here. I think most of us consider this kind of, all right, it's officially football season. You add in the video game now. I think it gives that extra boost heading into the 24 season.
It's the ultimate tease, ladies and gentlemen. You got football right around the corner, but you still got to get through the talking season part. Still got to get through the video game part. But here's the good news. With that added into the fold, at least now we get to have a little bit of time off before we actually lose our minds seeing August 1st roll around and realize, oh, still 29 more days before we actually get the first kickoff. So I'm excited. It's going to be a good time. It's a new era of the SEC, which is going to be really interesting with Texas and Oklahoma joining the fold. But now we get all of this added in. Expect some fireworks this upcoming week in Dallas.
Yeah, guys, it's interesting to think that, after we get done with SEC Media Days, that'll be Friday the 19th, I believe. That's when I'll depart from Dallas. I mean, fall camp will really be right around the corner because especially you think about Oklahoma, they play on that Friday. I think Mizzou and Arkansas play on the Thursday, right? So they're going to start a couple of days earlier than most. So, I mean, it's going to be like 2 weeks after that. We're going to start getting these fall camp reports. And I'll ask you guys this before we go any further. Were you guys like me growing up, you loved SEC Media Days? Because I was someone that, yes, it's talking season. People will tell you it doesn't matter. But when you're as starved for football as we are, and we'll start with you, Dave, I mean, it's one of those things where I always found myself on the edge of my seat. And granted, too, these were the days of Steve Spurrier and Phil Fulmer, and there's other guys that, really you could count on to bring the heat. I feel like now with social media, maybe it's watered down a little bit because they know every little thing they say is going to go viral. I mean, we saw this yesterday. It's not SEC related. I guess kind of, though, because Gus Malzahn's an SEC man through and through. He makes a harmless comment about KJ Jefferson, and everybody's losing their minds because he compared him to Cam Newton. He's like, probably, I just wish I wouldn't have said that. So these coaches are very reserved, but still, it's always a lot of fun to hear from these guys.
Hey, CP, I don't mean to interrupt this real fast. My father-in-law literally unplugged this thing. Can I plug this charger in real fast?
Yeah.
I know it did. Yeah. It hit me just a minute ago. He unplugged the whole thing.
We should just keep this in here.
I'm just going to leave it and just
this is great content.
Live content.
No, I got the update on my computer. I was like,
it's like live TV. It's like live TV.
He unplugged his outdoor fan for me to get my charger. All right, I'm ready now.
You roll with the punches, Dave.
I think we'll just leave that in there. That's part of the preview.
You said SEC Media Days. No, you're right. It's not as these teams are so. I think we all three can agree with this. These teams are so covered now that we're going to talk about it. Expectations, things we want to learn from Media Day. It's almost like you feel like you know these people a lot better now. I mean, back in 04, 05, you mentioned Spurrier's first year at South Carolina. Philip Fulmer. I remember when Philip Fulmer didn't show up to SEC Media Days because he got subpoenaed by Alabama. Remember over the Albert Means probation stuff, he got fined by the league because he did Media Days from his home in Knoxville because he quote, feared for his life if he came. Remember, 'cause that's when it was media days was in Birmingham. So he
Birmingham.
thought Alabama fans would be there kind of attacking him because Alabama fans did have a true disdain for him because they thought he set the program back for telling on them for dealing with Albert Mean. So that's a memory. It comes up. Clay Travis asking Tim Tebow if he's a virgin at SEC Media Days. That's another one. I think it's a memory. It comes up. There's so many. You're right, though. It used to be you could only listen to it audio on secsports.com. Now, I mean, it's in a massive event. It's a conference. So it is fun to see how the thing has changed over. The whole thing is such a bigger deal now. I was going to ask, is it in Dallas? Is it in Dallas next year or they announced that?
I don't think they've announced. They will. So if it's like last year, they will announce next year's destination probably on Monday when Greg Sankey speaks. That's what they did last year.
We heard it's going to be. I doubt it's in Dallas again. Y'all think they go back to Nashville?
I think they're going to move this event around. I think they're going to bounce around. I don't know where it's going to be, but I don't know. I don't think this is going to be like the SEC baseball tournament or anything where we've got like one central spot. Again,
like
last year
was for so long.
Yeah, I mean, last year was my first time going, so I never got to experience, get the Birmingham experience, which
it's great.
I can't say that I'm all that heartbroken about it, but whatever, is what it is.
How dare you, Chris Phillips? How dare you? Birmingham is amazing. It's all right. It's not
Magic City.
Thing. The Magic City is fantastic. No, Charlotte. We're all praying for Charlotte. Let Cole win.
Well, that's ACC Media Days. That's the only problem. So
are you a Charlotte fan, Cole?
No, I just love the city. I want to move.
Well, let's just go to Houston. We'll go to Houston.
Listen, free travel for me. You guys can go ahead and crash on my couch. I don't really care. So this is probably where my unfortunate side comes out, where people get to now wonder, oh, that's why he talks that way. I was not SEC growing up. I was Big 12 growing up because of literally everything in my life was Big 12. I had Texas, Big 12. Oklahoma, Big 12. I lived in Colorado at the time, Big 12. Missouri, the reason why apparently I am the biggest homer for Mizzou, because if they were Big 12. I heard about Nebraska. But I still loved media days because of just what the ambiance was setting up for the game, setting up for the moments. And there were still legends at the time. Mac Brown, you also had Gary Pinkel. You also can bring in guys like Bob Stoops. You throw in at one point Bo Pelini when Nebraska was still pretty relevant at the time. You throw in countless other names that go from Baylor being exhausting to Iowa State being basically the doorstep of the entire conference. That was what I grew up with, was hearing about
Leach at Texas Tech.
Yeah, you had Leach at Texas Tech, which, again, that was his start to really becoming the folklore that he's become today. I mean, the names that were in the conference at the time were great, and it's also why I think I have still such an infatuation and care about the Big 12 is because of I love what's going on, and I love how consistently open it felt. Like, yes, you had Texas and Oklahoma at the very top, just like you see with Alabama and Georgia, but you always had this cast of characters that just made an impact, and you kind of started to root for the underdog, whether it be out in Lubbock and Columbia and Stillwater, and that became a big deal. Les Miles, when I was growing up, that was his first real major asset. And so I knew of Les Miles with everything that went on there with the eating of the grass because of his time in Stillwater, not because of Baton Rouge. And so I have an appreciation for media days, but there's nothing like the SEC, and it's only getting bigger and better because of what's coming in now.
So, guys, with that being said, let's dive into it. I want to go through each and every single day because what I think is interesting, I don't think anything's by accident. I don't think anything is by coincidence. They'll probably tell you the way they slotted the coaches is totally random, but I kind of refuse to believe that. So I'm going to read these off in order: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I've got these listed in order. We know the exact order of when they're going to speak. Obviously, Greg Sankey's going to kick us off early Monday morning. Then we got Brian Kelly, Shane Beamer, Lane Kiffin, Clark Lee. Then on Tuesday, we've got Kirby Smart, Josh Heupel, Brent Venables, Eli Drinkwitz. Wednesday, Kalen DeBoer, Jeff Levy, Billy Napier, Steve Sarkisian. Thursday, Sam Pittman, Mike Elko, Hugh Freeze, and Mark Stoops to close us out on that Thursday. I want to jump immediately to Tuesday. Tuesday's a heavy hitter day, by the way. Kirby Smart, Josh Heupel, Brent Venables, Eli Drinkwitz. Boys, do you honestly expect me to believe that Brent Venables, Eli Drinkwitz back-to-back is an accident after all the stuff we've seen in the offseason, the Caden Green thing? I'm not going to call it a rivalry yet by any means, but I won't be surprised if Drink's got a couple words for not just Venables, but really everybody in the SEC, maybe even the media after they picked him to finish 6th in the East last year. But Other ones, guys, that jump out to you, days you're most excited for. Again, Tuesday is definitely a heavy hitter day, but I mean, again, you've got Sark and DeBoer going on Wednesday. Like it's going to be a lot of fun all throughout the week.
Yeah, I would say the day I'm initially probably fired up about. I mean, nationally, I'm an alum, but it doesn't really have anything to do with this. I'd probably say the last 2 days. I mean, we're talking Monday. Lane Kiffin's always good for a good zinger, a good quote. He's an honest guy about the ecosystem of college football, the landscape. I mean, he's always talking about, I hate the portal, but you know what? It's part of the game. It's a cheat code right now, and we're one of the bigger users, so he'll admit it. You talked about Tuesday with Drink, Venables, and Kirby. Wednesday with DeBoer. I mean, I think we know how DeBoer's going to be. We've seen him in interview settings. He's going to be fine, but he probably doesn't even realize how big of an event this is until he steps foot in Dallas and he steps foot in that hotel, and he's like, man, this is a much bigger deal than
he sees all the Bama fans waiting out there for him, the guy that wears the ring on his head, right?
Yeah,
I guess he's no idea.
And you got Billy Napier. I'm interested to hear. I put this in my notes. I'm interested in Billy Napier. I was talking to somebody on their staff yesterday and somebody a couple of weeks ago. They're kind of like how some of the people in the media, I feel like, as the season's getting closer, are starting to be like, hey, watch out for Florida. They're confident. They're kind of thinking they're going to shock people. And again, they should be. He brought most of the group from Louisiana Lafayette, so they believed in what they do from a recruiting standpoint. I think most of us would agree this is probably the most talented roster he will have. But I want to see if he exudes that confidence as well at the podium on Wednesday. Does he kind of have an edge about him? Just wait till we kick off. I know people are saying we're going to lose 6, 7, 8 games. But no, I like our team this year. That's kind of what some other people I've talked to there feel like. I'm interested in that. So I would say Wednesday, probably. I think Thursday with Hugh Freeze is a pretty honest guy. I feel like he was telling us. I mean, if you listen to Hugh Freeze's Tuesday press conference last year, you could go determine whether to bet on Auburn or not last year. He's essentially telling you if they were going to win the game. But I think overall, I'm a little excited between just Kalen DeBoer on Wednesday, and I want to see if Billy Napier exudes that confidence as well.
Yeah, can we all just admit right now that Thursday was scheduled for the day of all the travel people? Because let's be real, nobody is facing pressure besides Sam Pittman. You got Mark Stoops. He's got the best job in college football. And I say that with honest confidence because it's realistic expectations for $7.5 million. Mike Elko just got hired. He's not in jeopardy of losing his job, and neither is Hugh Freeze. And all those teams are probably going to be somewhere in that 8-4, at best 9-3 range, at worst 7-5 range. So, that's Thursday. It's a snooze fest. If you're there, awesome. You get to say that you were the last person to leave the press room. Exactly. Chris is going to be there, and it's going to be like, oh, I was the last person to leave the press room. I love that they go straight back to back to back with Heupel, Venables, and Drake. And the part that people are forgetting about is Heupel. Because Heupel is now joining a conference where he's already been in said conference, but his team that he played for, and he's not as well liked as people want to make it out to be in Norman, Oklahoma, is following up after him. So you're talking about what is Drake going to say before Venables? What's Drake going to say after that conversation? I wonder what Venables is going to say about Heupel, because if he's going to have a couple of words, I think, for Oklahoma fans when he comes in. So that's a really interesting game. And I think that that's one of the more impressive teams because I've been on record saying multiple times, as much as I think Tennessee is going to be better, I think Tennessee is going to have a great offense. I think that they arguably have the best defensive line in the country, headlined by a dude that we all know is going to terrorize teams at the next level. They still have some question marks. And that first game against Oklahoma might be a tone setter actually for the Sooners rather than the Volunteers. Volunteers might end up fighting their way to get 10 wins, but one of those losses comes to Oklahoma, where Oklahoma, people are kind of sleeping on them. I'm not. Everyone knows I'm not. Everyone knows that I actually believe that Oklahoma is the greatest thing since sliced bread, because if they are, and we all can agree that I'm smarter than everyone else. But I do think that that's a game to where, yes, if they can set the tone, then the opinion and the aura around what goes on in Norman drastically changes the way for Texas. Wednesday to me is really interesting because it's a roller coaster. If you think about it, Jeff Lebby starts off and not really a lot of expectations. What do we know about Mississippi State? I don't know. Nobody else does, including, I think, Jeff Lebby. Then you also look at
two of Jeff Lebby's biggest fans are right here next to me. So.
Oh, there you go. And yep, we all know that one. But
John
you also
Sumrall should be coming to this thing, right, Cole?
We're not going to start this conversation. We're not. I'm not over it yet. I'm not over it yet. But Kalen DeBoer, you start off really high, and then it's the roller coaster. You drop all the way down to Jeff Lebby. Congratulations. I guess that works. Then you start to ride the roller coaster up for the wrong reasons. Get a couple of somersaults in there. because of its Billy Napier, which again, Dave brought up. I think that this team is better than advertised. And then you close out with Steve Sarkisian, where Quinn Ewers a few weeks ago said, we're going to be everyone's biggest game. And whether or not people want to hear this in the SEC, he's right. And the reason he's right is because you don't want to lose to Texas. And if you're a team that isn't going to the college football playoff or don't think that you can go to the college football playoff, you sure as hell want to make sure Texas isn't there in their first year either.
Yeah, Steve's going to close it out with a bang on that day for sure. That is going to be a roller coaster day, to your point. Guys, and we talk top storylines. I'm going to start with this one because this broke about 30 minutes ago, just prior to us hitting record. A guy we didn't talk about a ton, and I'm excited to hear from, is Kirby Smart. I was excited to hear for a number of reasons, right? You go 13-1, you miss the college football playoff, you got a lot to play for. You're going for 3 titles in 4 years. Hey, guys, how about the storyline? There's no more Nick Saban. Like, Kirby's the – no pun intended, the top dog at SEC Media Days. He's kind of like now taking the crown from Nick. He's wearing that, right? Kind of the czar of the SEC. And here we are. It's Groundhog Day yet again because Kirby's going to have to talk about more players getting in trouble, more off-field incidents. 2 players, Shmael Munden and I forget the name of the other one, but street racing, reckless driving. It's not one that I really want to beat a dead horse, but we have to talk about it. Like, it's a storyline. Like, why does it keep happening? And I know Kirby, if you gave him truth serum, he'd go to the podium and say, I mean, guys, we're doing everything we can, but with NIL, we're giving guys cars that go 180 miles an hour. And we don't know what else to do. So what are your thoughts on Kirby Smart speaking on this? Do you want to hear about it? Do you not want to hear about it? Because all of a sudden now it's become a storyline.
I'm sure someone like Pat Forday is going to bring it up. Yeah, it sounds like a question to be right up his alley. But again, it's like what you said, Chris. I mean, I don't think they're leaving team meetings at the Butts-Mehre facility, Georgia's football facility, handing out beers. Like, it's not like Stone Cold Steve Austin in the 90s, WWE Raw, shotgunning beers, and they're giving them keys to the car immediately. Like, I don't think it's that. I think they've done as much as possible. Is it an issue? It absolutely is. We talked a little bit off air. It's excessive at this point. So there's something. You got to do something. Like, you can keep bringing these speakers. Unfortunately, you've had staff members, teammates pass away due to these unfortunate circumstances. So you feel like it would hit home. I mean, Cole mentioned off air, it made Jalen Carter drop some, like in the NFL draft. So if that's not affecting you, there's only so much your head football coach can do when he's in charge of anywhere from 115 to 130 kids, depending on the roster size at Georgia. But I don't know what else you want the guy to say, and I don't know what else he's going to say. I mean, I'm sure he's going to be prepped over it with the SID when they roll in there. Like, hey, what do we want to say again? I feel like this is starting to become an annual thing. But again, I really don't know what you want the guy to do. I mean, you can't go knock on every kid's dorm room or their apartment every night. And like I said, they're not handing beer, handing keys to cars, vehicles when kids are leaving the facility. It's excessive. They got to do stuff internally. But again, I'm not going to pretend like I have the answers to that because I do know they have exhausted all limits to make this issue, this culture, I guess, at Georgia not a thing.
Anything, Cole? What would you do, Cole? How do you nip this in the bud?
Dang it didn't work. I thought I was going to play. I had Life as a Highway.
I hear it a little bit faintly.
I had it live on my phone.
It sounds like the car's driving.
Yes, I had the right version.
Away.
I had the right version for the greatest Pixar movie of all time. I will die on that take. Cars is the best. Look, there's nothing you can do at this point besides literally going to the last limit. That's where Kirby is. You constantly have seen over the last few years where not only reckless driving has cost the life of a player, but staff members. It's cost millions of dollars towards a player's draft stock who had to leave the NFL Combine to go speak of this event back in Athens, Georgia, be booked, processed, and then eventually released on bail bonds. But the reality is that you can bring in as many speakers as you want. You can have as many internal conversations as you want. You can suspend a player for a game. But the problem is you don't suspend them for the games that you need to suspend them for, to where it actually is a tone setter. Game week 1 against Clemson, they're going to go ahead and they're going to play, and they're going to have both those players probably on the field because you want to know why? They're difference makers for the team. You're not getting rid of a potential all-SEC first-team defender because of you don't want him to learn a lesson. This is the SEC. We've seen it constantly over and over and over again, and it's not a Kirby Smart thing. I'm going to make this abundantly clear. This is an SEC thing. Saban did this. You've seen Heupel do this. You've seen countless other coaches. Les Miles has done this. Urban Meyer has done this before, where they'll suspend them for a game like Tennessee Tech or like Kent State or like South Alabama or something along those lines, to where you know that you can get your second teamers in there and it's not going to miss a beat. There's two options that you can do if you're Kirby, and neither is going to happen. You could suspend them for week 1 against Clemson, which is a tone-setting game, which, again, Clemson right now is kind of flying under the radar in terms of the national aura because they can't transfer portal anybody, because the transfer portal that Dabo Swinney believes in is the one that only starts off when you're in high school, because we all know that's a transfer portal too. Or you release them. You kick them off the team, and you're not going to do that. You're not going to kick them off the team, because if you're trying to win a national title, and boosters will be on your butt, and athletic directors will be on your butt, and message boards will be running rampant. But those are the ways to actually see change, because it's like whenever you were a kid and your dad told you, hey, don't touch that, and then you still did. He's like, hey, don't touch that, you're going to be grounded. And then like 5 minutes after you get grounded, it's like your mom comes in and goes, oh, don't worry, I'll talk it over. We'll mull it down. Go ahead and have fun playing outside. It's the same thing. Like, all you're doing is you're bringing in talkers, you're bringing in people, and they'll learn their lesson the hard way. Well, the hard way is now, I'll just go ahead and miss a matchup on a random Saturday where we're going to win by 40 plus points. No, it's about being accountable in the big time games. Miss the Alabama game, miss the Clemson game, be kicked off the team. But we all know that's not going to happen, because in the SEC, you're trying to win titles, to keep your job and get a higher paycheck.
So, guys, more fun talking points and storylines at SEC Media Days. The low-hanging fruit, the one that's going to be really prevailing all week, is Texas and Oklahoma, right? We're in Dallas, Texas, the Lone Star State. I'm excited to hear from both Venables and Sarkisian. What do you guys most want to hear? Because, if we played a drinking game, I said take a shot every time somebody asked, are you ready for the SEC grind? I don't know that you would survive the week. But what do you most want to hear? What are you most excited to hear from Brent Venables and Steve Sarkisian?
Really about depth. I feel like that's really about most coaches for both of them. Specifically Oklahoma there, especially on the offensive line, some guys on the back end as well. But really, again, I don't think they're going to be able to really speak on behalf of the schedule until probably next year's. I mean, they can guess how it's going to be, these back-to-back road games or these back-to-back games against Tennessee and Auburn for Oklahoma, for example. But I think next year you'll be able to get a real guess on that, or they'll give you a good assessment on that. I think overall, I'm a little bit with Cole. I know Cole said he grew up. I don't think this is going to be some massive adjustment for him. Maybe I'm wrong from an SEC standpoint, but I think Texas proved themselves last year, made a playoff, went to Bryant-Denny Stadium, and I wouldn't say handled Alabama, but won by double digits. And they were kneeling the ball, ran the last 6 minutes off the clock in Bryant-Denny Stadium. That doesn't happen a lot, especially under Nick Saban. I don't think it's going to be as big of an adjustment. I don't think they're going to be as wide-eyed as people think. Both these guys have coached at big programs before. Brent Venables was at Oklahoma as a DC under Stoops, was at Clemson with Dabo Swinney. They've coached in big games. They played good teams. Same with Sark. Been at Alabama, been at USC in their glory days. He's now coached in multiple big games at Texas. I really don't think it's going to be as some big of an adjustment as some kind of like casual SEC fan would maybe be flexing that muscle like they're not ready for this. They're going to be ready for it. I think it's just kind of a little overstated.
A breath. I want to hear a breath from Brent Venables, because here's the one thing that I will say about covering the Big 12 Media Days the last 2 years. That man can go on rants and rambles and soliloquies and conversations and just continue to come and pontificate words that don't even have sense to make with the conversation. At some point, one of you guys can stop me, because if I'm literally emulating Brent Venables at Big 12 Media Days, because if he answers like 2 questions and then it's like, hey, you got to get off the podium because you wasted all your time breaking down stuff. Like, we do the betting lines every year for who is going to have the longest intro. I've already hammered down money on Brent Venables starting it off. Like, he is going to ramble. So I want to hear him actually answer more than just a few questions to the public eye, not just in the little scrums that we get off to the side where you're going to have to find clips on Twitter and people who actually go to the event to really sit down and get the answers that they're looking for. I want to hear him be able to speak highly of what the future looks like in Oklahoma. And I also kind of want to see both of them puff out their chests. The reality is that, yes, the schedule is going to be tougher in the SEC. Nobody is going to deny that. If you show up on a Saturday afternoon and play in Lexington at Kroger Field and you do not bring your A game, I don't care who you are. You're going to lose. You're going to drop a game. You're going to be now questioned about your future. And the same thing goes in Starkville, and the same thing goes in Columbia, and the same thing goes, and even I would say probably Nashville if you really are that bad of a performance. But like, that's really what it is in the SEC. You can't have anything less than an A- game to walk out, where you can in the Big 12 against teams like in Morgantown, where West Virginia's had some down years, in areas like TCU, where Fort Worth has had some down years, in Waco with Baylor. So I want to see them act like they belong here, because if at this point you are a part of the SEC, and these are two programs that can puff out their chests in different ways. For Oklahoma, they're better than Texas over the last decade and a half. They are. I mean, numbers don't lie. Like stats lie, production lies. Numbers don't, because they have 14 Big 12 championships. Texas has 4. They recruit at nearly the same level over the last decade as Texas. They've transferred portal better than Texas. They have more college football playoff appearances than Texas. They have more. They have the same amount of wins in the college football playoff as Texas, 0. They also have more national championship appearances than Texas. Like, that's where we are when you look at Texas and OU. So, like, act like you belong here, because Texas is sure as hell not showing up to the party like, oh, yeah, we're excited to be here. We know there's going to be a grind. No, Steve Sarkisian, who's coached at Alabama, is going to show up and say, yeah, I know what the schedule's like. I've been here before. These players have been prepared for it. That's why I've been recruiting at this level, not to build against a team like Alabama on a random Saturday. It's to build against a Kentucky. It's to build against a South Carolina. It's to build against a Tennessee and a Florida. Because if I know what these teams are after facing off against them as the OC, and I want my roster there, I want Oklahoma to act the exact same way. I don't care that we have question marks on the offensive line. Bitch, we got Bill Beatonbaugh as our offensive lineman. How dare you think that we're not going to have a great trench play? Like, that's how I want them to act.
So, guys, when you look at the week, other big storylines, or maybe what's the big storyline you're excited about? I'll go a little bit different direction. I'm excited to hear from Greg Sankey, future of the league, future of college football. You know, we don't have a college football commissioner, but it kind of feels like Greg Sankey's in that role. You know, Dave even mentioned, you know, last year he dropped the bombshell that first day of where SEC Media Days was going to be. So I feel like there's going to be something from Greg Sankey, whether it's regarding scheduling, it's 9-game conference schedule, it's the future of the playoff, expanding to 14 teams. We already know that. You know, I'm excited to hear what Greg Sankey has to say about the future of college football. Obviously, there's tons of storylines with tons of coaches, tons of players. But I'm excited to hear from Greg Sankey himself and what the future of the conference looks like. If we've got more expansion around the corner, I'm sure he's not going to let the cat out of the bag. But hearing things like that, what's a storyline that stands out to you guys that you're most excited to, you know, to hear? Because, again, there's tons out there, but is there one that jumps out to you that you're most excited to get out of Dallas?
Yeah, Chris, to your point, too, we'll probably hear about a potential 9-game schedule at some point. Like, the SEC is not just going to go play the extra 9 and let almost ESPN get that free money from that. They're going to make them, hey, we see this is how much this individual game makes. You're going to owe this. But me specifically, I was thinking about it last night. We've all done plenty of SEC previews. But I was thinking, y'all tell me if I'm wrong here. We don't really have a quarterback battle going into this year for any team. Like last year, you had Alabama with Milroe, Ty Simpson, and Tyler Buckner. Missouri, we talked about it yesterday on the show, Chris. You had Sam Horn. Brady Cook was not a bona fide starter, I think, till, was it week 1, maybe K-State game, that he kind of like locked that down for Missouri. But who else was another quarterback battle last year? You had a little bit. I think that may have been it. But we don't really have one. Everybody's kind of rolling in, kind of knowing at least, not saying there's not going to be a quarterback change at some point due to injury or bad play, but going into the year, it kind of feels like everybody's like, we know who our QB1 is. So I think it goes back to, I think a lot of teams from previewing have a lot of secondary issues. A lot of, hey, who's going to man the nickel spot? Who's going to man the other safety spot? Alabama brings up the Husky position all the time. Texas brings up the bandit position all the time. It's interesting to see what these teams do. So many teams now with the sport, it's an offensive sport, as we all know, are playing with 5-6 DBs, playing nickel dime packages a lot. So a lot of these guys that are that 7th, 8th DB, they're going to go transfer at the end of the year because they want to go play immediately. So a lot of teams don't have a lot of depth on that back end. I want to see some of these teams, Cole mentioned it, Brent Venables can go on a rant. He's a defensive guy. Him and Zach Alley, the new DC. I want to hear about them, talk about their back end a little bit. Josh Heupel, I think that's a major question. I think Cole's spot on. I think Tennessee could have the best defensive line, defensive front in the league potentially. Surely top 3. But if they don't get the secondary fix, it's going to be bombs over Baghdad again. And as quick as these offenses get it out, James Pierce could become a little irrelevant if they're just knocking them or getting the ball out quickly. Tennessee's not be able to get off blocks from the perimeter, which we've seen before. Florida, a horrific secondary tackling team last year. Will that improve this year? I think secondary, I know that's not really sexy, but with the explosive plays, we talked about Tennessee's explosive plays yesterday, Chris. I think that's key today in college football where there's no quarterback drama going into the season. I want to hear about teams' depth, specifically on defense, specifically on the back end.
You guys heard Dave Aranda yesterday, right?
Why are you recruiting better? We're paying players. That's why.
Yeah, I want to hear that. I want the honesty. I want the straight up honesty from one of those coaches. And I do, because that is the name of the game. We can talk about the luxury tax of what is a Nick Saban-led roster or a Kirby Smart-led roster. But think about it for a second. People are ready to go ahead and come with the pitchforks and with the flames for Brian Kelly for not landing Dominic Williams or Simeon Barrow or Derek Harmon because of they need to get better at the defensive line. And everyone's like, oh, it's a poverty program. It's a poverty program. What do you mean? LSU is the second richest program in all of college football, certainly in the SEC. They can bring in whoever the hell they want, and they showed that by landing Jay Johnson, Brian Kelly, and Kim Mulkey, and they were probably going to be in the running for Jim Schlossnagle if Jay Johnson took the Texas job. Like, it's LSU. They win championships all the time. It's not a money thing. It's how they want to resource their money and how they want to allocate their money. But at South Carolina, they may have to spend a little bit of money. A Florida this upcoming year may have to spend a little bit of money. A Mississippi State may have to spend money. Lane Kiffin's been completely honest about this from the get-go. Transfer portal is free agency. You got to pay these sons of guns if you want to get them on the roster. I want that brutal honesty. You want to know why Missouri is getting better when it comes to recruiting? Because we're paying players. You want to know why Missouri is getting better when it comes to the transfer portal? Because the NIL fund is actually kicking up. You want to know why Oklahoma was able to land Dominic Williams? Because we paid him a lot of money. I want that brutal honesty because that is the new norm in college football. Another storyline, Neil Brown decided to run his mouth again and come with the double birds in Las Vegas. Hey, remember when you said that we were going to finish last? Screw you guys. Yep, screw you. I want to have him drink. I do. Drake is the funniest man in all of college football because he looks like the accountant of your dad's best friend, but he actually is calling plays on the sidelines and doing a pretty damn good job working with Kirby Moore. I want him to call out reporters the way that Dion did. Do you believe? No, you didn't believe. No, I want Drake to do that because if he's willing to call out Josh Heupel. That's how we do things, Josh. Well, call out Pat Forty, but that's how we do things, Pat. Like, I want that version of Drake because if it's just fun to see when coaches go ahead and kind of puff out their chests and act like that they're better than us because technically when it comes to calling plays in college football, they are. I also want to see how honest Lane Kiffin is about this roster because if I think that he realizes, like we all realize, expectations are a little bit different at Oxford this year. It's not like, oh, they're not building something promising. I think that Lane Kiffin, Dave's about this up. He's going to go to Florida when they fire Billy Napier. I don't know if that's entirely true, only because of when you look at the resources that are now being put in place with Keith Carter, when you look at his daughter going to school there, when you look at what he has currently, it's all in the makings. But this is the one team to where you feel like for the first time in a while, Ole Miss is actually going to make some noise. Ole Miss is, we're not considering Ole Miss a fun team. We're considering them a contending team. And I want to hear how he talks about, what does this season mean compared to what it may look like in 2026, what it looked like when he first got here. Because you look at all the names that were added in via the portal. You look at all the names that are coming back. I mean, I've said this already once. I think expectations are no longer making the college football playoff. I think that that's not good enough for those in the Rebels Nation. I think that the playoff expectation is to win a game. It's to win multiple games. It's to be one of those Final Four teams and actually feel like, oh, this was a 4-team playoff. There'd be no question that we would be in the spans.
Guys, at times it can be hard to read between the lines of the coach speak, if you will. But when you talk about, what we're most excited to learn next week, again, it's I think some coaches are going to give you more than others. But, I would say, and we'll bounce it around here, I'm most excited to learn, to your point, Cole, I'm excited to learn both Ole Miss and Mizzou and how they're handling the expectations and the hype. I want to hear that. And I think both those guys, to your point, pretty transparent, pretty honest. I really loved, honestly, what Lane Kiffin said in the spring, that we got a really talented roster. We don't know if we're a great team yet. And I think that was a great line. I think that's something that can motivate his squad while also acknowledging, hey, we should be really good. We got a lot of talent. So I'm most excited to learn, if I can learn anything from those two coaches, Lane Kiffin, how they're handling the expectations and the hype, and then also Mizzou. How do you follow up the 11-win season? Because before that, I mean, this time last year, guys, the conversation was, hey, Eli Drink was in the 500 year, and he may not be there anymore. Like, his seat is warming up. His seat is getting hot. And I think both these dudes, too, how they're handling the expectations when it's pretty well known that you don't have an easy schedule, no such thing. But those two schedules are two of the most manageable in the SEC. Like, that's one of the reasons why the expectations are so high. So when it comes to what I'm most excited to learn, I just – those two guys, I think, in similar spots, they were the darlings of last year and the biggest surprises, just how they're handling those expectations. And, you know, is this going to be the new norm for those two programs, or was it more of a one-off for each of them? So I'm excited to hear them talk about that. Dave, we'll jump to you. What's your most excited to learn from the week?
Two coaches bring to mind. We hadn't talked about him yet, but Sam Pittman. I want to kind of see that energy. Like, does he have that energy? Because there's a lot of kind of rumors floating around. I feel like really since the middle of June, a lot of people kind of think maybe he wins 7, 8 games, he retires. Like, it's interesting to see if is he going to have that energy out there. You know, he's a pretty laid back country guy. He's going to kind of say what he says. It wouldn't shock me from talking to people over there. The Petrino slide in there, if they go win 7, 8 games, and that happens, depends probably what Rhett Lashley does at SMU. He's a former player at Arkansas as well. Maybe he gets in it. Jeff Traylor's been there before, but I don't know how much with UTSA. Maybe he gets into it as well. But I want to see, does Sam Pittman have the energy for it? Does he have the energy, like, you know what, like, because this is going to be his last job no matter what. I'll be interested in that. And then I mentioned Hugh Freeze earlier. I feel like he's pretty honest all the time. And I saw he was at some Regions golf tournament. He brought up people should get excited for this year. I mean, usually all the most successful Auburn coaches have made a big splash, a big dent in their first 2 years. I mean, Gus Malzahn did it in 2013, his first year. Granted, Gene Chizik ended up getting fired in his 4th year, but he did win a national championship in year 2 in 2010 with Cam Newton and them. But is this a big – I don't think you should expect that from Auburn. I don't think Hugh Freeze either, because I think they're better players or younger guys. But I think he'll let you know, kind of like, hey, yeah, like, we feel like we're probably going to be better in the back half of the year because our younger guys are going to be playing that many more reps. They're going to be better.
Dave, to your point, he was very transparent last year. I left SEC Media Days last year when he said, hey, be patient with us. I left that saying he's telling the fans to be patient. Let's just try to make a bowl game. He's
almost to a fault a little bit at times where it's like Auburn fans. Like, I remember the week of the Georgia game. I was almost like, God, it'll be a miracle if we'll keep it within 3 touchdowns. These Auburn fans didn't show up to Jordan-Hare on Saturday. I mean, God, how bad has practice been this week? I mean, like, and then he comes out after the Music City Bowl. And it's just like, I didn't prepare at all for this. I was too busy recruiting. Like, it's almost like it's not to the Gundy effect, but like sometimes Hugh's a little too open where it's like, all right, I expect it to be the same, but I think he'll be a little more higher on this team. Last year, I think it was first year, he was trying to temper expectations. But I'll be interested to hear what he has to say overall. Is Peyton Thorne taking that next step? Because you talk to people there, they love him. I think he's limited from a physical standpoint. He's got that ceiling, but they like the leadership, his preparation, stuff like that. But I think Hugh Freeze will be an interesting listed as well heading into next week.
Let's just continue the trend about talking about teams that we really haven't mentioned. Number one, what version of Mike Elko are we going to see? The Hugh Freeze or the Kevin Sumlin? And what do I mean by that? Well, Hugh Freeze, bluntly honest last year. And Mike Elko comes from the East Coast. He comes from the Pennsylvania, New York area. They do not mince words up there. They call it as is. They are literally wide open. My mother is from that area, and she just gets right to the point. She doesn't beat around the bush. She immediately just goes, yeah, I know what's going on. It's not going to be Mike Elko. And what is really Texas A&M? Defensively, he's a guru when it comes to line play. I mean, how many players have heard their name called by Roger Goodell during the NFL draft because of learning underneath Mike Elko? Is a staple. And Nick Scorton, who, by the way, EA Sports, what are you doing having him ranked at 90, the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year? That is a top 25 player. That was my only gripe yesterday, and you'll see the video that eventually comes out. You add him in, you bring back Shamar Turner, you bring back Shamar Stewart, you have great depth behind those three. You have a solid defensive front seven. You have a pretty overall, I would say, above average secondary. Do we still see the way that we have for years, A&M put the wagon before the horse and actually not live up to expectations? Or are we seeing this year instead brutal honesty? It's a new offensive formation. We don't know if Connor Wegman's going to fit exactly to what Colin Klein wants to play in. We don't know who our number one wide receiver is. We don't know what our interior offensive line looks like. We don't know who is our right tackle. But if you're patient with us, we have a foundation. We have the right people in place to build something promising at Kyle Field to where 10-win seasons aren't expected. They're almost kind of guaranteed. And then the other team, what is Alabama? What really is Alabama? Because right now, it's always cool to hear about what they're doing on the recruiting trail. I mean, overnight, it's like Alabama fans went to sleep and woke up and said, oh, it's Saban again. Hi, blue chip prospect. But we got 5 stars. We're not going anywhere. And it's like, yeah, that's great. Well, Jimbo Fisher did that. And it was called 2022 and they went 5-7 and they weren't ever able to get back to the right hire. And there we go. It led to his ultimate demise. It's really cool to see where this team is right now to have a good interior offensive line. I mean, Parker Brailsford just joining as the center for a Joe Moore award-winning offensive line, now coming on over and working with Jalen Milroe. Big blessing, like massive blessing. Jeremy Bernard, the last time a 6'1" wide receiver walked onto campus that didn't have a lot of playing times at his last school was Jameson Williams, and he went on to lead the SEC in receiving yards and become an All-American. Is that what we're going to see? Ryan Williams said, oh, I'm going to decommit. No, you're not. You're right. No, I'm not. You're Kalen DeBoer. I'm definitely not going to decommit. I'm going to come back and play for you. So it's like, what version are we actually going to see of Alabama? And what differences are we going to see around the program? Because we knew what to expect from Nick Saban when he took the podium. We knew what he was going to unveil. We knew what he was going to hide behind the cloth. We knew what he was willing to talk about. Is DeBoer, who so far has been brutally honest about the expectations and what is the overall ambiance of Tuscaloosa, what this job means to him and what it means to be at the university where it literally is nicknamed Titletown because of what Saban and Bear Bryant built? Is he going to carry that same aura or is it going to be a different feel? And to me, that's the most interesting part because for 16 plus years, all we heard was Saban. And now it's a fresh start. And it's one to where it's kind of you're going in with blind eyes, but still high expectations.
Yeah, to your point, Cole, I'm excited to hear from DeBoer. I mean, I was able to, for the first time ever, be in the same room with Nick Saban and hear him at the podium, and the energy in the room was different. It just was. Like, everybody quieted down. All eyes are paying attention. Nick was Nick at the podium. I mean, he was, it was the king of coach speak, if you will. I mean, I think he started to loosen up as he got later in his career. But I'm excited to hear Kalen DeBoer has done everything differently. He walks to the beat of his own drum. They've opened up practice. They're playing music. I do kind of wonder what his approach is.
You got Roll Tide Willie at practice calling.
Roll Tide Willie. We don't give a piss about nothing but the Tide. We got that going on. So I'm curious or just curious what that looks like. If he's, if there's a little bit different vibe, if you will, which inevitably there will be. Guys, in closing here and on that note, I'm speaking about DeBoer. You spoke on Mike Elko, Cole. Coaches and or players that you're just most excited to hear from for whatever reason, whether it's because you hope to learn something about their football team, you just like the player or the person or whatever it might be. For me, guys, the direction I go, because you talk about media days, which of these coaches, which of these teams is media days most important for? I think it's the coaches that their seats are either warming or they're on the hot seat, because you are speaking directly to your fan base. You're speaking to your boosters. You're speaking to everyone that's involved with your program. Like the things you say, guys, it's really, really funny and interesting how, when you're winning games, I don't think fans really pay attention to the Tuesday press conferences. Like the diehards do, but it's not really a talking point. But when you're losing, people pick those things apart. And when things are going bad, when you got fans tuning into the offensive coordinator press conference on Wednesday, the defensive coordinator press conference on Wednesday as well, they're picking apart what they have to say. So you can't tell me it doesn't matter, right? Especially when you're a coach that the seat is warming or you're on the hot seat. So Shane Beamer and Clark Lee on Monday. I look at Billy Napier. I look at Sam Pittman. those four guys, I'm really intrigued to hear what they have to say. Do they have a message for their fan base? How are they able to sell their program? And really, guys, sell themselves that what we are doing and what I am doing, I'm still the right answer for the program. So those are the guys I would say I'm definitely most intrigued to hear from, because I think for them it's pivotal to send a positive message that, hey, maybe things said about us in the offseason or where we're being picked or what's being said, that's not who we are. That's not who we're going to be. I think they've got a lot to gain, but also a lot that the message they need to convey is a really important one.
No, absolutely. I mean, I would say one of the guys is Kentucky. I would go here, Marquise Cox, the offensive lineman from a player standpoint. I haven't mentioned a player yet. I don't think we generally really mentioned a lot of players. But randomly, I want to hear him talk about a little bit. I know a lot of people aren't going to get real fired up about Kentucky, but a quarterback I have some questions on, but just kind of want to see, hey, can they finally get that play at that position? Is Brock Vandagriff and Marquise Cox being that left tackle over there? If he talks highly, just because I'm sure he's going to get asked, hey, what's been the transition here with Brock Vandagriff? I want to see kind of what he says about it. Because if he's speaking high, y'all know, like, offensive linemen are usually pretty honest dudes, too. They're probably the most regular people on a football roster from like a humble standpoint, because they don't get a lot of credit. I mean, if you're not hearing from them, they're probably doing their job. If you're not hearing about them being talked about in a game, they're doing their job. So I'll be interested to see what he has to say about their new signal caller, Brock Vandagriff, in Lexington. So he's a player I would be excited about.
Let's go with 4 players real fast. Number 1, Graham Mertz. I compared him to mashed potatoes because he is a complimentary perfect side dish. But here's the thing,
Cole. Do you want me to ask Mertz about that comp? And
sure.
Yeah, I think I might have to ask Mertz.
Sure.
Hey, what dish do you think you are? Is mashed potatoes accurate?
I agree with that. But here's the thing with mashed potatoes. Sometimes you add a little bit of garlic. Sometimes you add a little bit of paprika. Sometimes you add a little bit of ranch seasoning. Give it that little bit of kick to it. Does he have that kick energy? Listen, I was the highest graded quarterback last year in the SEC, which he was. I had the highest passer rating in the SEC, which he did. He had the highest touchdown to interception ratio last year in the SEC, which he did. Yet here I am comparing him to boring, bland, and mashed potatoes because it's fun to work with. It's ideal to be side dishes, and he actually lived up to the hype. Danny Stutzman. I don't know how many people understand this. Defensive players don't hold back because if it's always offensive energy, it's always about the wide receivers, it's always about the high profile. Danny Stutzman may not be an all SEC preseason first team defender, and the dude was a stud last year in Oklahoma. And also, all he's heard all offseason is how Texas is running the program. Well, everyone kind of forgets that Red River last year ended with Oklahoma out on top holding the golden cowboy hat, not Texas. So how does he pontificate? How does he answer these questions? Quinn Ewers, main reason why, you're going to double down. You're going to double down now at the not Manning Passing Academy, but in front of everyone in the SEC. Hey, are you still thinking that you're the biggest game on everyone's schedule this year? Yes or no? Do you have that confidence walking on it? Do you carry yourself with that type of light? Do you think that you belong in that same category as literally everybody else? And then last and certainly not least, to me, it's Garrett Nussmeier. And the reason I say Garrett Nussmeier is because you're replacing a Heisman Trophy winner. And you know what? I love what I've seen from Nuss so far. I think that he has every capable skill to lead LSU right back to a 10-win season. Funny how that works at Brian Kelly. Just somehow the most underappreciated coach gets one of the more underappreciated quarterbacks. And then there we go, gets back to 10-win seasons. Oh, wait, it's going to happen because we know that that's Brian Kelly. But how do you live up to the hype? How do you live up to replacing a guy that is made SEC and college football history? I mean, Jaden Daniels last year didn't only just help build a offense that people are going to talk about for years. He was one of 4 players to throw for 3,500 yards and rush for 1,000 yards in a season in college football history. And now you have to follow that in a year where the 12-team playoff is around. Oh, and on top of that, people are starting to say, well, maybe this isn't the right job for Brian Kelly. So how do you live up to that hype? Those are 4 players I'm really excited to hear what they have to say.
Well, gents, the unofficial kickoff to the 2024 college football season will take place in Dallas, Texas. Again, guys, make sure you're following along with us. Dave, Cole, myself, we're going to be covering this thing, attacking this thing from every angle you can think of. So, again, make sure you stick around. Again, we're going to have a blast out in Dallas, Texas, covering the event. Again, guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. We're all across social media, our website as well, secunfiltered.com. And again, make sure you got those notifications on. You're staying tuned because it's going to be content bleeding out the eyeballs, as I like to say. We are going to be relentless with the content, covering everything, every single coach, every single player, every single storyline. You name it, we're going to be all over it. For Dave Shoemate, Cole Thompson, I'm Chris Phillips. Again, guys, thank you all so much for tuning in. We appreciate each and every single one of you, and we'll catch you on the other side.